here's the first. We're on time. Open the board meeting. And we will start by the pledge, standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on the agenda is adoption and approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, our next step is Students of the Month. Mr. Jen will be,
Okay, let's start with Kenilworth. And we have our representative from Kenilworth. And we will start with Sam Ruby. Yeah. Hi.
Samby has been chosen as Student of the Month by her teachers because she is an engaged and an amazing student who always puts her best effort into everything. Samby has impressively maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout her 2 years at Kenilworth and has taken on an academically rigorous class schedule. These classes include Accelerated Math, Advanced English, and Advanced Band. Ms. Maneris, Samby's math teacher, states Samby is an excellent student. She completes each and every Math 1 assignment and precision and accuracy, often going for beyond the work required. Samby always comes to class with a smile and is well liked and respected by her classmates. In science, Mr. Schmidt says Samby excels in all aspects of science. Samby is kind, respectful, and considerate of others and works well with her group. She is a pleasure to have in class. Mr. Quintua, Samby's history teacher, also says Samby always turns in exceptional work. She is an excellent role model for her fellow students. You can always count on her to deliver work that will go far beyond your expectation. I always look forward to her assignments and projects. Samby has always been an engaged student, even entering and winning the Gateway Young Writers Contest in 5th grade. When asked how she has been able to maintain such a high level of academic success, Samby states that she puts effort into making sure her materials are organized and she has a plan of when to get everything done. This type of personal responsibility allows Samby to excel both in school and in the many community activities and hobbies she is a part of. When she is not working on her academic responsibilities, you might find Samby taking tennis lessons and winning tournaments, learning new skills in extracurricular art classes, or participating in her Girl Scout troop. She has been a member of the Girl Scouts since kindergarten and is currently working on building an elder-accessible vegetable garden at the Sunrise Senior Living Center with her fellow Scout members. If she has any spare time, Samby enjoys creative hobbies such as knitting, embroidery, and making clay pottery. Samby's favorite class in Kenilworth is science, and she hopes to one day pursue a career in the field of biology. After high school, Samby is interested in attending UC Berkeley. We wish you luck as you follow your dreams, Samby. Congratulations.
Okay, Jose Palacio. There you are. Yeah, come on up. No, I think we have it. Do you have a script for Jose? Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Jose has been chosen as Student of the Month by his team of teachers because of his academic skills and wonderful personality. The teachers at Kenilworth had many great things to say about Jose. Ms. Maneris, Jose's math teacher, states Jose is a hardworking student that puts his best effort into each and every math assignment. When Jose is unsure of something, he makes sure to come in and ask for help or clarification rather than giving up. Jose is always on task in class, making sure to get his own work done and offering help to his group members when needed. Mr. Quintua, Jose's history teacher, says Jose has been a wonderful student to teach these last 2 years. Aside from his fantastic work he completes, Jose is a detailed worker who has the unique ability to combine hard work with a sense of humor. He's learned when to precisely chime in during class discussions with few notes from his kazoo. Jose has maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout both of his junior high years, and has shown a high level of dedication and maturity while doing so. Jose is not just an academically talented student. He is also an exceptional musician who plays the trombone in his advanced band class. Jose has played for the Sonoma County Honor Band 2 years in a row and participates in the jazz band after school at Kenilworth. Recently, Jose has also been learning to play the baritone saxophone. Jose's love of music has encouraged him to one day pursue a career as a jazz musician. In order to follow this dream, Jose hopes to attend a specialized jazz program in New York after high school. For the past 6 years, Jose has taken dance classes with Ballet Folklorico of Petaluma. This Petaluma dance studio is dedicated strictly to teaching the folk dances of Mexico and keeping the rich culture traditions alive. Jose is dedicated to his art form and attends practice twice per week on top of his other responsibilities. The dancers also perform for different venues, including at our local Butter and Eggs Day Parade. When Jose isn't busy with academics, music, or dance, you may find him skateboarding, playing video games, or enjoying time with his family and friends. What an outstanding young person. Congratulations.
Thank you. Petaluma Junior High, please. We'll start with Eleanor.
We are proud to present Eleanor Labau as one of our Students of the Month for March 2020. Eleanor is a young woman of many interests and talents. She is an excellent student athlete, a natural leader, and a kind and caring person. She was born in nearby Santa Rosa on February 28, 2006, and we are lucky to have her at our school and in our community. Eleanor looks forward to combining her academic and athletic interests and eventually attending the University of Maryland or Chico State on a lacrosse scholarship to study sports medicine or physical therapy. Academically, Eleanor is a solid student with all A's and B's. She enjoys school and actively participates in class discussions. She prioritizes doing her homework, keeping her grades up, and being respectful to her teachers and peers. Her English teacher comments she is a quiet leader. She goes about her work methodically and intelligently. She is a graceful, strong, and dignified self-advocate. She asks thoughtful, analytical questions and has an exemplary work ethic. By virtue of her practices, she makes the whole class stronger because others notice how she goes about her work and try to do the same. Her elective teacher echoes this praise with, Eleanor is a respectful, personable, and conscientious student. She goes above and beyond in class, strives to do her absolute best, and is always sitting in class with a smile. Eleanor is truly a role model for other students. In addition to focusing on her academics, Eleanor spends a lot of time on the field playing lacrosse and soccer. She plays lacrosse with the River Cats team, and she plays well enough to compete at a relatively high level. During the off-season, and to keep in shape, she plays soccer for the Petaluma Youth Soccer League. Eleanor enjoys riding her horse named Katie and playing among the dunes at the beach. One of her most memorable and meaningful experiences was working with the elderly population at a local retirement home. Many of them suffered with dementia. Eleanor and her friends made music soundtracks for them that they called Music and Memory, to help them feel connected and happy. Eleanor's parents look forward to the future. They comment, Eleanor is a great athlete and leader. She will be an awesome coach, leader, and healer. We agree and are very pleased to present this caring and hardworking young woman, Eleanor, to the board and have her represent Petaluma Junior High School as a Student of the Month.
And Joey Jensen.
We are excited to present Joey Jensen as one of our March 2020 Students of the Month. Joey was born on June 15, 2006 in San Francisco. He is a hardworking, kind, and respectful young man who has aspirations to carry on the success of his family's agricultural roots in the dairy farming industry. Joey has a natural intelligence, great instincts, and really cares about others. He looks forward to continuing his education and attending college to enhance his agricultural career goals. When looking at Joey's transcript, it is quite impressive. He has earned mostly A's in rigorous coursework, and he has been strong in school since the beginning. As a promoting sixth grader at Liberty School 2 years ago, Joey received an award from his peers and teachers for his exemplary citizenship and a national award for having an excellent GPA. His current teachers recognize Joey's strengths. His English teacher gives him a rousing endorsement. Joey is a great leader. He is kind, intelligent, hardworking, practical, and helpful. He is the kind of student others want to emulate, for all the right reasons. He's a Clark Kent type who is strong, honest, and willing to be forthright. By virtue of his enthusiastic participation in every class period, he makes the best of every class. If he is absent, both the level of participation and performance of the whole class suffers. He is truly one of the best students of the year. In addition to keeping up his studies, Joey is extremely active in 4-H. He has shown his dairy cows for the last 5 years at the county fair and won multiple awards. He enjoys the hard work of a branch and is frequently busy helping his dads and neighbors with their farming chores. In his spare time, Joey rides his dirt bike, and in the summer he enjoys the thrill of riding a wakeboard along the shore. Joey's parents are very proud of him and all he has accomplished. He is hardworking, kind, and respectful. His family friend points out that Joey never backs down when a task is difficult and or unpleasant. And when he comes upon a problem, rather than running for help, Joey will take his time to figure out how to deal with it. Joey's integrity makes him a young man with the capability to complete many tasks that an older person wouldn't even consider. Joey Jensen is one of those students who takes the challenges of school and life head on with courage and integrity. We are thrilled to have him represent Petaluma Junior High as Student of the Month.
Okay, let's have Casa Grande come up. We'll start with Logan Null.
Logan Knoll is a spunky, energetic, and hardworking kid. He greatly enjoys spending time at home with his dogs and family, but also never passes up a chance to explore. Logan thrives in buzzing atmospheres and loves having a good time with friends, whether it's going out for dinner or staying in for a movie night. Logan understands the importance of balance between his social life and focus in school. At school, he loves to get involved with his fellow peers in whatever's going on around campus. Logan has enjoyed participating in the Casa Grande Drama Department's numerous productions over the past 4 years. Whether he's slaying it on stage as an actor or helping out with the show as a director, he's thankful for all the friends and connections he's made over the years through the drama department and at Casa overall. Logan plans to go to a 4-year university in California after graduating so that he can stay close enough to still have great times with family and friends.
Let's see, Miguel Robertson.
Miguel Robertson has grown up in Petaluma his entire life and loves spending time with his family. Traveling has always been something they do together and have visited a number of interesting places, including Hawaii, Italy, Switzerland, and Spain. Ever since he was 5 years old, Miguel has played multiple sports, including football, basketball, and baseball. Playing sports has taught him many life lessons, such as perseverance, dedication, and time management. Although sports have been a major part of his life, his primary focus has always been academics. He has always believed that performing well in school and getting a good education is the key to success in the future. He loves math and science and wants to pursue a career in the biomedical engineering field with a desire to help develop prosthetics for disabled veterans. He will be pursuing this goal next year, attending Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, where he will also be playing football. He hopes his career will allow him to continue to study what he loves, as well as helping others. Congratulations, Miguel.
Petaluma High School. And Kaylee Smith.
Kaylee Smith is a senior at Petaluma High School who has taken AP and honors courses over all 4 years. She showcases her deep passion for the environment as an active member of the Environmental Club since her junior year and dedication to Ms. Camacho's AP Environmental Science class and Mr. Takata's Marine Science class. She enjoys being active and has participated in both badminton and swimming and is grateful for the relationships she has made with her teammates. She dedicated 3 years of her high school career to producing the morning announcements via Trojan Live and aided with filming countless sports live streams and school events. She has thoroughly enjoyed her time at Petaluma High, especially this year, and appreciates all the support she has received from her teachers, counselors, and peers. In the fall, she will be attending Montana State University and plans to study environmental sciences and hopes of one day having a job that will help save the planet. She is grateful for all the opportunities that Petaluma High has given her and feels prepared to take the next step into college. Her academic excellence has rewarded her well, and her experiences have shaped and readied her for the future.
Sergio Hernandez.
Sergio Hernandez Alcantara is a senior at Petaluma High School, where he has committed to succeeding academically and participating in extracurriculars. Throughout high school, Sergio has consistently challenged himself to improve himself by taking on academically rigorous courses, such as AP classes, and building upon his interests and passions by taking classes like legal studies. He's become a member of Lake Crew and JSA since his junior year and has enjoyed his time giving back to the Petaluma High School community as a Lake Crew leader and having nuanced conversations about policy and other political topics within JSA. During his junior year, Sergio has decided to announce his candidacy for GCR Senator at the second Triennial Convention of the State of NorCal JSA holds in Sacramento and subsequently won his election at the third Triennial Convention. Upon being elected to the regional position, Sergio has worked as a liaison between statewide leadership and JSAers in the Greater California region. During his senior year, he has worked alongside his fellow regional officers to not only improve and connect the region, but to also improve the state of NorCal JSA by helping guide the state through tumultuous times. In his spare time, Sergio continues his passion for politics by paying close attention to the 2020 Democratic primary and keeping an eye on the political news cycle. Sergio hopes to be admitted to George Washington University to major in political science in the nation's capital. Sergio credits all of his success to his parents and family who have supported him. He's extremely grateful for all the support they've given him over the years. Sergio is excited to embark on the next phase of his academic career and can only imagine what sorts of heights he'll reach with the continued unwavering support of his family.
Okay, wonderful as always. Now we have student reports. Let's start with Casa Grande. And before you start, I just want to compliment you on your play.
Oh, thank you.
As was
That
Spuds,
young man.
Idaho, right?
Yeah,
It was really fun.
Hi, I'm Holly Van co-president of ASB,
And I'm Ava Phillip, the other co-president of ASB.
and we're going to tell you about what's happening at Casa Grande.
Our COSA students went to the Leaf Futuro Annual Healthcare and Career Symposium. It basically has a lot of workshops for people who are interested in the medical career. And
turned out in force on Wednesday night for the rivalry game with Petaluma High School. That was amazing. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. I had to play practice. But I saw photos and people were going wild. It was probably the biggest turnout of spirit I've seen this year. Really fun.
English in the Garden. One of our English classes for 10th graders studied the novel Bless Me Petaluma, and they went into the garden to study various herbs and plants and see how they can apply to medicinal teas. So they made 3 herbal tea blends, one stress relief, one's cold and flu, and then the other is a mystery blend. And the students got to taste them and compare how they affect and how they taste.
Jazz band for Project Grad. I was there. I was on the piano. Thought that stood well with my piano partner, who is wonderful. I was probably sitting in the back somewhere eating pizza. Varsity Jazz Band was on the stage at Lagunitas for our annual Project Grad fundraiser. We made a lot of money for Project Grad this year, which is awesome at Lagunitas. We had raffles, we had auctions, and we played some really, really fun music, and I think everyone enjoyed it.
Our ACTEC team claimed the 36th victory in a row.
It's just incredible.
That is a list of our award winners, and I heard that they had a lot of fun.
Jumpstart is going on with SRJC, getting ready to go to SRJC, getting classes in, getting counseling in, and Doyle scholarship applications are on the way. That is a very, very good scholarship for SRJC goers, and it's a wonderful path to take.
This is our United English program. This is how we collect our eggs. I was able to embark on this internship with them. This is Amber Almond and Claire Collins. They're taking a sample of DNA from the fish that we had just extracted eggs from. I was able to actually return and go back on another internship with them, and it's a great learning experience in my opinion.
Miss Kelly Holly, who's here right now, actually, was honored with the North Bay Spirit Award and featured in the Press Democrat. Miss Holly is a wonderful teacher. I had her for 2 years, and she always makes class so much fun. She really deserves this award.
And this is the first time in Casa Grande history that we've won an NCS wrestling tournament. This is Jack Ferris, right after his big victory of winning the NCS title. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
And now we will hear from Petaluma High School.
My name is Carson Knight, and I'm a junior in the Petaluma ASB class. Okay, so the events that have happened so far in March are the WASC visit, and I've seen them popping into other classes. In addition, there's also been GQ 2020, which was a really fun event that happened for the senior class, and it was just great to go and watch. Spring sports have begun, and the winter sports have ended, and there was also the annual March Monterey trip, which everyone in the marine science class loves every year. This is a photo from the most recent GQ that happened this month. And this is a photo from the beloved Monterey trip for marine science. So for winter sports, the girls basketball advanced to the first round of the NCS playoffs, as well as the boys basketball team also advanced to the first round of the NCS playoffs, and the girls soccer advanced to the semifinals in the NCS playoffs. Some upcoming sports events are swimming on March 11th versus CASA, so that's a big meet. Track meet against Montgomery on March 14th. A boys tennis match on March 12th against CASA. Girls lacrosse and boys lacrosse on March 10th and 11th versus San Marin. Badminton on March 26th versus Vintage, and baseball and softball on March 11th and 10th versus San Marin and Mount Tam. Some upcoming Petaluma High events are that the FFA competitions begin this week. The Ashland trip is also this week, where some English teachers take a group of kids up to Ashland, Oregon. And then there's also a freshman dance coming up called the Freshman Bash, which is going to be on March 27th. And that's the presentation.
Okay, we're going to take about a 2-minute break so our brilliant students can go home and study. And we'll be back in 2 minutes. We're all back, so I will reconvene the meeting. And, are you ready? You're on it.
I figured we'd stand up while we were along there. Oh, I'll just, you go. Okay, perfect.
How are you? So I'm Kelly Holly from Casa Grande.
I'm Lee Boyce from Petaluma High. And we were here last May, and after we gave you some update on how NGSS was being rolled out, some of you had asked us to come back and give you some more information about what was going on, so that's why we're here.
Good.
So where we are now is, you can just click through those, we have a requirement of 2 years of science still. It's minimum for the state requirement, 1 year of life and 1 year of physical. For some students, that means they take a physical science class and then a biology. For other students, they're still skipping physical science, so they're taking biology and then chemistry. And then unfortunately, those more advanced students are, you can come in, guys, it's just me. Our more advanced students are the ones who are missing earth science, so when we look at the CAST scores this year, which we finally had a year worth of scores to look at, some of that shows up that they've skipped over that earth science component by not taking physical science and not being required to take a 3rd year of science. So they all take a test in the 11th grade that includes earth, space, chemistry, physics, and life science. So we talked a little bit about giving the CAST to 10th graders, since all 10th graders are enrolled in science, and part of the problem with junior level scores for students who aren't enrolled in a science class is that they don't really care, and they haven't thought about science in a while. So, but the test is now in March, and so it's a very early sophomore year. There's sort of half the year of science they haven't had yet, so we didn't do that. And then we had some scores from last year that I didn't put in here, but that showed that the seniors, some seniors took the test last year, and they were markedly lower than the juniors. These are the scores from all of Petaluma schools, so grades 5, 8, and 11. The average met or exceeded the standards is 40%. The state average is currently 29.93%.
And what's important to see about these scores and the way they're displayed is as they're reported out in different areas, they're reported in different categories. One of the things that's really important to see here is that 48.43 are at the standard of nearly met. So those are the students that we can help move most easily. And really, it's only at 11.41 of not met. So that group over there, the 48.43, those are the students we really need to address most carefully, and they would benefit greatly from having that third year, for sure.
And if you go ahead to the high school, then these are our results. The good news is we're currently well ahead of the state average. It turns out we're actually ahead of the county average also. The results at Petaluma High were 50.34%, at Casa Grande 44.76%. If you average those as well as the alternative schools, we're at 45.51, and as I said, the state average is 29.93 or 30.38 for 11th grade only.
That's impressive.
We thought so. So the strength of our program is that we have a lot of students who do take a third year of science, and so that makes a big difference in their scores. But as we move forward and the state catches up to that and more districts require 3 years, those state averages are going to come up. And we're not sure how we can make ours come up anymore because we don't have that extra year to
If we
provide.
stay at the status quo. And some of those numbers are also students that are taking double sciences. So they're not necessarily an additional student, so we need to be able to nudge those students.
What do you mean by taking double science?
They may be taking chemistry and anatomy physiology
Okay.
in their junior year.
All right, thanks.
Next. Sorry, there are all kinds of things built in. So this is again just breaking it down into those categories of 45.79% are nearly at the standard met level. So we've got a good sort of half that could move easily up to the next category with a little more science background. And that's just a breakdown of what we've talked about, the state averages. If you want to look at what those percentages are, they have a much larger group to move than we do. In the county, there's quite a range. I mean, from 17% to 40% high schools in the county. So the information we got from the cast is that the lowest scores were in the domain of physical sciences, which includes chemistry and physics, not
That middle one
atypically.
there.
The middle one in blue, red. Were you gonna say something?
I was just going to say in that middle one there, and as we're looking at increasing the number of the years of science, and we have physical science that is that freshman class that covers chemistry and physics, we have a handful of students that, or more than a handful, 2 sections, 3 sections at CASA anyway, that are skipping that year and going into biology, so they're skipping that introduction to physical science and chemistry, and they're not necessarily getting the physics until they're getting that 4th year later on. So that's an important aspect that we need to make sure we're catching.
And again, these 3 categories are a little different organization of standard met, near standard, and below standard. They take the middle 2 and split it, so it's not comparing apples and apples. So the progress we've been trying to make, the elementary schools have aligned their science programs and have adopted some curriculum. The middle schools adopted the 3-year model several years ago, and this year they piloted, and I think adopted, yes? Just barely. We tried out a program, both high schools tried out a discovery program in the fall that we weren't happy with, and now we're going to be piloting right after spring break the McGraw-Hill curriculum in biology and physical science to see how that looks. It's difficult for us to pick a high school curriculum because they're all based on a 3-year program. So none of them are saying, here's how you can do it in 2 years.
There isn't a single program out there with 2 years at all. They're either the 3-year or they're a 4-year model. The 3-year integrates earth science through the chemistry, physics, and life. And it has a program where for freshman level they do have one that has chemistry and physics with earth involved, and then they have life with earth, and then they have the chemistry, which we also will talk about later, how chemistry is oftentimes integrated in amongst many of the electives as well. But it is important to realize that the curriculum is being developed as we speak. We've tried out different ones, we've seen different programs now, and there is not a 2-year model in existence.
So our current graduation requirements, just to refresh, are these. We're still having difficulty sort of clearly counting students who are only in a science course because we have all these funny ways we're labeling things. Cliff and I talked about this a lot today, that we need to figure out how to relabel things so we know what's a straight science, what's a math science related, what's an elective, what's a CTE, SAG. So we have a whole list that we've gotten pretty well cleared up, but in terms of just requiring another year of science, there is this math science related thing that's 10 credits required now as part of the graduation requirement. So you wouldn't have to increase the number of graduation units to graduate. You could change that to be a straight science class. We spoke last May about the idea that the math department is really not interested in a 3rd year of math being required. I know they're talking about it in Santa Rosa, but it's not something that's being pushed here, and so we've talked to our colleagues about how that would work. We have the CTE 10 credits is under foreign language and VAPA, but those CTE courses also count for science, some of them. So the CTE that's there are not the CTE that count for science.
Could you remind me, in the A through G requirements, this science, lab science is 2 years?
2 years.
2 years. For the CSU, the UC recommends 3 years, and it's a D lab science, so not counting the G electives.
Yeah.
So it's a narrower selection of courses out of those.
Although most of our courses that are called science are
Okay.
Ds.
Not the math science related, but the
Right.
pure science.
So they're A through G.
They're almost all D.
Okay.
The A through G is more of the electives,
All right.
and the D are your
Lab
pure
science.
science, lab sciences.
And college requirements is 1 physical lab, 1,
High school graduation is 1 physical and 1 life for the state of California. The UCs, still say 2 years of lab science,
right,
just
1
lab
physical,
science.
And that's
and
the
1,
D.
and 1 lab.
They're not as picky about that.
Okay, oh, they're
You
not.
could do chemistry and physics,
And they're, oh,
They
okay.
have-
but they really, it's hard to get into a UC with less than 3
I know,
For the math.
or 5. Yeah.
I know.
So this year, what you asked us for last May was to try and dig out some statistics, which has proven to be an interesting process. So what we found for this year was, these are the 11th grade total enrollments and the numbers enrolled in science. That's what came out first. Then we found, if we went and dug a little deeper, some of the courses were labeled in a strange way, so we went back and relabeled those. Chris Camacho went back and rewrote the environmental science course description for this district because it was listed as a non-science course, because somebody checked the wrong box back whenever, right? So Cliff and I were talking today that we're going to add. So you want to talk to that?
Let me just clarify that. So in our graduation requirements, we either have life or physical. So if a science course is a life science or physical course, we say it meets that requirement.
Mhm.
If it doesn't meet one of those two, we just deem it an elective.
Oh,
It's
I
not a
see.
science elective, it's not a math, it might be math and science related, of course, but it's just an elective in general. And the reason we didn't name that also a life or also physical, because in theory, a kid could take that and it would fill the life or the physical science graduation requirement, and they could skip bio, and they could skip something. But as we discussed, because we have prerequisites, that can't happen. So
So what's the prerequisite for the AP Environmental Science?
Chris is here.
So we have recommended chemistry, they need to have a B or better in biology, and then math, 2 at this point.
Okay.
So what's weird is in most cases that doesn't fill the science bucket for high school graduation requirements. It fills the elective bucket, but it fills the science bucket for college.
So it's a
Funky.
thing that we're working on, a new way to categorize these things so that, an AP environmental science class is clearly students enrolled in a science class.
Yes.
And a
So-
lab and a D.
So
See,
based
that
on what
is-
you just told
see,
me
that
about,
is
the
the-
prerequisites would be enough for graduation, the prerequisites alone.
That's correct. That's true. Yeah, so, that's an AP course. You're not gonna have a freshman take AP environmental science without any biology or other science background. So we went back and added those courses in, we end up with the percentages you see there in red. There is a discrepancy between the two high schools. Last year, it seems like they were closer, they were more like 80-80. So we're not quite sure what happened there. The other thing,
Sports med.
oh, part of it, that's right, was the sports.
At our site, because the sports med is still listed as a PE class. So when it pulls up, the sports med class doesn't show up in these numbers because of the way it is also.
Isn't sports med more science?
Yes, but it's not categorized as that right now.
And it's not taught by a science teacher.
Okay, got
So
it.
it's hard to do that. But there's some things about how students are counseled to go into that class in place of a science class that makes for some of this differentiation.
But those numbers don't show up there, but they do, they would be a science.
They would be doing some science.
Right.
Okay.
So the other thing you asked us to look at is how that would affect other courses and other programs at the high school. So we looked at the number of students who have a free period or an IWE, meaning they're not doing anything. So there are over 2 sections, so more than 60 students at each site that have free periods. So when you talk about at Petaluma High, there are only 62 juniors not enrolled in science, and 60 of them are taking an IWE. So you're not going to take from anybody's program to fix that problem. You're just going to take away their free period. And Cliff was telling me today we have seniors that don't even have either 3rd or 6th period, so not only is it an ABA issue because those kids don't come to school in the afternoon, but they're not going to class either. So that's what we looked at. I didn't have the CASA numbers, but at Petaluma there are 29 IWEs, and so there would be 33 students who might come from other classes across the board, whatever other electives they were taking. So that was what you kind of looked at. That's what this is kind of about. How would we do that? I don't have any other answer to that question. Cliff and I talked today about it's pretty messy. It's not like, oh, you lose a period of art and gain a period of science. They would come from across the board, so it would depend on the enrollment in those courses that particular year. But since the future job market is heavily STEM, and we've been unable to figure out another way to get all these standards into 2 years, we feel like for the good of the students and their future job markets, this is something we ought to look at.
So, yeah, you kind of answered my question about the implications for electives and CTE.
Well, CTE is a science. I mean, we have CTE sciences, and those are counted here. Those students are already taking that as their 3rd year of
So
science.
that would be their 3rd
That
year.
would be
Well,
like,
it
if
is
at our
now,
site, it'd
yeah.
be like HOSA, medical technology, those are already
Anatomy,
CTE
physiology
courses.
for us.
And also your ag classes at
Yeah,
Petaluma High.
yeah.
So those would count as a 3rd year.
And they're already counted in this. So
And they're
those
counted
students-
And those are all CTEs.
Well, some of the ones we
Yeah,
just mentioned,
yeah.
yes. We have bio and community health, we have chemistry and community health, we have anatomy, physiology. And then all of our ag courses are
Science.
CTE, and so there's an ag bio, an ag chem, and a sustainable ag. So there's a 3-year science program in the ag department that are all CTE courses.
And within the ag department, are all students within that department required to take all 3 years?
No, because they only have to take 2.
Okay.
That's
Even
why
though
we're
there's,
here.
there's a.
That's why we're here,
Even
so that
though-
they could have to take 3.
And the 3rd one is already being offered.
Is being offered. but
Just
not
as
required.
chemistry, physics, anatomy, all those are 3rd-year science courses currently offered.
Okay.
Next. So these are the models we showed you last spring. I guess it's been a year ago now.
Mhm.
The models that were being suggested by NGSS with ours, put ours in down there at the bottom. So if you talk about how do we get all the standards to every student, right now we have physical science with some earth and space thrown in. We have biology with some earth and not much space split. And then the 3rd year is a crapshoot, excuse me, but we don't know what they're going to take or what standards they're going to get. So that 3rd year is the year that we really need to have required, so students can be sure to get all the standards over a 3-year period.
And that 3-year course model with the 4-year course model is what we are going to be piloting, and we're getting the training on that on March 23rd. So we'll have a really clear feel for what that is, and several of us were at the introductory to that and feel excited about what's available to us. So we'll know more after that opportunity.
Is the physical science that students, is that a lab science?
Yes, it's a
Oh,
D
it is.
lab science.
Okay.
Yeah, just like all the others. So these are our concerns. We have a very strong science program. We have a lot of students who do take a 3rd year of science. but we don't have a clearly defined curriculum because that's not required and we don't know where they're going after the second year. So currently the only way we can accomplish meeting all of those standards that are being required of us is that we have a strong freshman level course that addresses chemistry and physics with some earth, then they go on to life with some earth, and then we have a third year that I think we would have to develop based on the needs of the students. Not every elective that we offer is going to meet all of those needs. So, there's some room for growth and change along those ways.
But there is many of our electives that are that third year already do incorporate strong chemistry, like the chemistry of the water and the marine sciences and the environmental chemistry that's involved in the anatomy and physiology. So it wouldn't be a completely revamping of what already exists. It's not going to take away existing programs. It will be adding to and strengthening what exists, just making sure that the kids are partaking of the opportunities.
So for the moment, what we do is focus on what they call in NGSS the SEPs and the CCCs. So standard engineering practices that are skill-based, like how to define a problem and how to ask questions, how to make explanations. Kelly was just telling me about a webinar she did.
It was a writing sample for AP Physics and looking at writing through sciences. So it was a webinar that I participated in, and the emphasis was on that claim evidence and drawing conclusions that when they're scoring for AP exams in the sciences, you could have the right numerical answer, and without a strong explanation of that, you actually get a score of 0, even though you have the right answer. So looking to see how that ties into sciences and the importance of the process being equally as important as having the correct number.
So that's kind of what NGSS was built around, so that they have these cross-cutting concepts, so matter across all the curriculum, energy, waves, ecosystems, all throughout, with the idea that you're writing arguments from evidence, will make our students strong enough to be able to take this test. That's why they've performed well so far. But at some point, the content is going to catch up to them, and you have a lot of students who give up when they look at content they've never seen before. I don't know what they're talking about, waves, what? And so they have no background, so they close down and they don't test as well as they could.
The thing that we're seeing as we look at the curriculum that we're going to be piloting, but also the CAST scoring, is the process, the tools, and the applications when we're looking at the new piloting program in that 3-year model with the training for that, is it implements what is expected of them for it, so it would be practice, and without that 3rd year, they would be testing on it without a year of practice.
So teachers are in the process of choosing their curriculum. Programs that we've seen are all based on 3 years. Courses would be developed to fill in that 3rd year once we had the permission to do that. Off periods and IWEs would be able to take a 3rd year of science without coming out of any other elective classes. We heard, I think, last May about whether that would cause more students to fail. Science is hard, so that's what causes students to fail. And I have data that shows that probably just as many kids fail PE as they do science. So, not to cut down any PE teachers in the audience, sorry, or math or anything like that. It's not, just because we're going to require 3 years of science. And Nora's here. I know I've been in touch with Jessica Denon. Our alternative ed teachers also are on board with this, so they don't feel like that's right. Am I speaking correctly? Okay. That it's not going to deter from their program.
So the math science related, that sounds very vague.
It is very
It
big.
is. It's a wide gamut of things as we currently have things classified.
And that's a requirement.
Right now, it's on the
It's on the
And what
city
kind of
schools requirement.
classes fall into the math science related?
A whole bunch. So,
From art to
yeah, it basically
Floriculture.
took from the electives category and said, of the electives, you're going to take a course that presumably was math or science related when this originally started, I don't know how many years ago. But the way it looks now, if we listed them all out, there's plenty that have nothing to do with math, nothing to do with science at all. Got sociology in there, anthropology, we have social studies courses, there's a whole
It's a mess.
And what do the math people feel about that class, those requirements?
Well, many of those classes are not math classes. As you was mentioning, sociology, anthropology, those are social studies classes.
Right.
Which gets a kid credit for a math or science as a 3rd year. So if you took 2 years of math and then you took sociology, you could get credit for 3 years of math.
Right. Not at the UCs though.
So,
Correct.
Is that right?
That's correct.
So I think that's a good question though, because I'm a little bit, this makes sense, there's no doubt. I think that they've done a lot of work here. My question, I guess, is we've been also doing a deep dive in math. And in my conversations with high school math teachers about the scores, the most common issue that's brought up is the fact that they don't have a 3-year requirement. So I'm interested as to why they're not looking at the same thing. Because that's always brought up. That's
But
the
don't
first.
the UCs have a
that's
3-year
the-
math requirement?
That's the first. That's the first
So
thing
part
that's
of it
brought
is
up.
that they know it's already required by the UC. So kids who are going to UC have to take 3 years of math.
And CSUs
The
as
rest
well?
of them to require it at the high school for graduation. And we polled all the math teachers and they said, no way, because it's so difficult to get those students who aren't going on to UC through 2 years of math.
Right.
To get them through a 3rd year would be painful. So
And there's
maybe we're not talking to the same math teachers, but I've
Yeah.
talked to all of them at both high schools.
Oh, no,
So-
I'm sure that's, I mean, if they shared that, my question still is, doesn't change the fact that our math data, which is a huge metric that we're measured against, there's a significant gap.
Yes.
Well,
in
you
that,
may have the
so-
same gap in CAST in a few years, right?
Yeah.
Because CAST has been going on for much longer, so you have ELA and math data for years.
Mhm.
What
We
we're
have one
suggesting is that you may have the same gap in CAST if you wait 5 or 6 years to improve the number of science classes that are being offered.
I have a question.
Yes.
Like a clarification. Okay, so you mentioned that people are taking biology and chemistry.
Uh-huh,
Yes.
So are they taking that freshman, sophomore year? Are they
Yes.
doing it sophomore, junior year?
no freshman,
If
sophomore.
they're taking biology as their first course, they're taking that as an honors biology class their freshman year.
And at Petaluma, some of them take regular bio,
And they're taking chemistry
and then they're taking chemistry as a sophomore.
So what you'd like to see is a freshman class that sort of takes bits and pieces from all the different sciences?
Well, and it would be specifically the chemistry, the physics, and the earth science that would
Okay.
give them the very strong background, because if you understand the chemistry and the physics and the earth, it'll do even better in biology, and you'll be truly prepared for chemistry. So that,
So you see that as a freshman class, like in earth science?
Is there a reason why they're
Not in
taking-
earth science. So what we have right now at CASA is more like an earth science for freshmen. Our physical science at Petaluma High is a 3rd chemistry, a 3rd physics, a 3rd earth space.
But
Is there a
freshmen
reason
do-
why freshmen aren't taking that now?
Yes, because their parents thought it wasn't worth it.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the short answer. Originally, it was.
I know at one school, is it because it's not A through G? Is it?
Originally, it was not, it was a G and not a D. So 2 years ago, we changed it to a D lab science. But there was a lot of turnover at the UCs saying it's any introductory course doesn't count, right? So the UCs for a long time didn't count 9th grade. 9th grade was part of the junior high, it just anything you took junior year. And there's a lot of change in all of that. And we were talking today about honors level sophomore courses, right? Honors juniors, honors sophomores and juniors in my honors chemistry class all get a grade bump. Honors sophomores in biology don't get a grade bump. Honors sophomores in world history do not get a grade bump, because originally sophomore courses didn't get a grade bump. And chemistry is still considered by the UCs as a junior course. My honors chemistry course has been over half sophomores for years. So there's a real inequity with the way the UCs look at courses and what they count and what they don't count. So getting the physical science put on the D list was just to make parents happy, so they didn't say, well, there's no point in taking that because it's not a D lab science. So now it is, but this is Petaluma, and we have a long history of parents talking to parents and deciding what they want to decide outside of what we tell them. And so we still have a lot of freshmen who think it's more advanced if I take biology than if I take physical science.
Okay.
So that's where that came from. So we would like to ask you to consider, supporting the idea that we change to a 3-year science graduation requirement so that we can move forward with this. Because we brought this to you last May as a sort of, here's what's going on with NGSS, what do you think? And now we're back saying we still haven't had any direction to move that way, and now we're being asked to choose curriculum that is based on us moving that way, and if we don't, then it's hard to decide how to define our curriculum.
It sounds like that math science related thing is where that could fit right.
Well, that's certainly a way to add the extra year of science without upping the graduation requirements. But it is going to have an effect to some degree on electives. And when Cliff and I were trying to dive through the data today, it's pretty hard to know where those kids will come from. But there are a fair number of students who don't take a class that could add that third year of science without coming out of some other elective.
Help me understand why a third year requirement would have to be linked with the curriculum selection.
It would help us know which program to go with, but partly because of the way it's written. The ones that are written with the earth science included would be for sure a 3-year program that you could address all of the standards. If we choose not to go that way, we just say to continue doing what you're doing, we would then look for the 4-year model books, because that would match what we're already doing. And we would do pretty much what we're doing now. Just continue with what we're doing now and hope that the gap would not occur.
Because if a kid only took 2 years of the 3-year curriculum, you're not confident they would meet the standards.
Correct. We're pretty confident they would not.
It's pretty impossible to do, even if you had physical science and biology, all of the 5 standards in those 2 years. We would have to try and divide them up as best we could. And I know Susan and I wrote our current physical science course, and at one point we counted 187 standards we were trying to do in 185 days.
And many of the teachers that are here that are supporting have gone through the power standards and other things we've done within the district over many years. And we know it's not a possibility.
So most of both of our departments here, because they were concerned about putting this forward and trying to get some direction for us to move forward.
And that's what we need to do. We need to work together as a community, because we have to be as a community. Without teachers and administration and board, we have to be as one united front. Because then we'll have our act together and we'll do the best job we can for our students.
So what's the process for this?
Well, the agenda, I imagine.
Well, it's some way, shape, or form, I'd love to know, what the board feels about this. I mean, it does come down to, at some point, if we were going to morph that math science related, make that just a science, make that the 3rd year, and just dissolve the math science related, it will have some effect. It's hard to predict exactly where, which electives, which courses, but it would to a certain degree. So without knowing, if the board wants to consider that or not, we really kind of don't know where to go with it.
So how would it be difficult? I mean, it's clear that the courses that are under the math science designation, all those courses would need to be looked at. Some of those courses, it sounds like, would fit under a 3rd year science, and some of those courses would not. So really what it comes down to, unless I'm missing something, is there is a list of courses that would not be viable for receiving
Science credit.
the math science credit, and so that would be something you'd have to weigh.
But those courses wouldn't go away. So like sociology is still going to be there under.
Can we see a
Well,
list of courses
And they'll get credit for
that
the elective.
fall into that bucket of math
If they
science?
took it as an elective,
Right.
Yes.
right?
Yeah, because you still have that large category that they have to take as elective
X
courses.
number of electives.
Yes.
So I mean, we crunched all the numbers. I could show you, I could share this with you. The number of students who are juniors who are in science, and then the ones who aren't in science, what are all the different courses they're taking? And it's more than just math science related, it's any elective.
But I think
So
if
they
we're
have
looking,
65 credits of electives.
if
So
we're looking at the math science related as the bucket to put that third science in, I would like to see what courses currently are acceptable for those 10 units. Is that a possibility? Just out of curiosity, I mean,
Which science courses are in math science related, or just which?
Everything.
every
It's
course,
listed as math
every
science
course that a
related.
kid can take to satisfy that requirement.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Of course.
I would think that you would want to know what the unintended consequences are.
Right.
Because it goes back to, I agree with them, working together as a community. There are folks that may feel different, and I wouldn't want you to be blindsided by that. And so I think that they laid a very sound case for a third year. But there are also some consequences to this. And if we're not really clear about that, because I've been through this, adding the third year in my previous district. And there were some significant unintended consequences. Even though, in the situation that we did, it was the right thing to do and we ended up moving forward. But you'd want to know what those things are.
And that's why I'd like to see all of those classes.
And also what
and-
classes all the juniors are in, like, because what is the foreign language, it's just kind of goofy.
Foreign language, visual performing
Your
arts.
10 credits have to be either foreign language, visual and performing arts, or a CTE that is not in your science bucket.
That is an A through G. It has to be an A through G CTE.
Yeah, and the visual performing arts, does that count in lieu of foreign language?
Yes.
Yes, you
Before
don't have to
Yes.
see each, no, no.
You don't have to do
Not
both.
for you. Just, no, I'm talking about for kids going on.
High school, these are high school graduation requirements.
Yeah, but the UCs require 1 year of foreign language or 2?
So we're not writing high school graduation requirements
No, I
for
understand.
UC-bound students. We have a lot of students who don't go to the UC.
I'm aware of that. I was just curious about the requirement for the UCs and CSUs, that's all. I'm not
Yes.
passing a
So
judgment.
that's a different,
It was a
Conversation.
curiosity
I
question.
answer to that one.
What?
I honestly don't know the answer.
Foreign
Yeah, it
language.
was just a curiosity question.
2 years.
2 years
It's
of
2
foreign
years.
language, 1 year of visual performing arts.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay,
1 year visual performance,
all
and
right,
then they'll take recommended 3.
right, they all say right.
Yeah. So kids who are going to a UC are gonna do all that because they
Right.
have to get into a UC. This conversation is really more about how do we educate everyone who's graduating from Petaluma City Schools to the extent that they can perform well in society. They can get a job in a STEM career, right? They can pass this test before they get out of high school.
Right,
They might go on to a technical career of some kind. And so I don't think you're writing graduation requirements for UC-bound students,
No, and
right?
that
Because
wasn't-
so it's a different story, and so we're just looking at how do we get every student who gets through a high school has the basis of all the sciences to be able to understand the world around us.
yeah,
And
no,
as
and I
it
understand
changes.
that, it was just a curiosity. I wasn't saying, oh, we got it, every kid's gonna go to CSU, because they're not.
And then I haven't officially polled any of the secondary math folks about this third year, so, you know, the fact is, right now, at Casa Grande, there's only 38 juniors who aren't in a math class. Petaluma High, there's only 24. So, you know, it's
Who aren't
almost
in
de
the third year
facto
math.
Yeah,
already happening,
They're doing it.
more so than science.
okay.
Yeah.
But I would wanna, actually, get more, not that I don't.
Well, and that's what
fully
you all asked
understand.
us last May, and Cliff felt that we needed to come back and tell you where we are, which is basically saying, okay, here it is,
And
Decide.
this was excellent.
so we can move on from here.
Yeah, I just want to hear more about that math. That sounds bizarre to me, so I want to know more about it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are moving on to Ms. Chris Thomas. Yeah. Thank you. That was really.
I always like to get free, it's not early.
Okay. I just said, Chris is going to do the presentation. Here. But I did not want to make that an option.
Well, I've come to embrace that in my career, so it's okay.
I love your presentation. For someone who's definitely not a numbers person.
That's nuts. So, second interim, it seems like we were just here not that long ago doing first interim, but it's been 3 months. It's really crazy. And it's been a packed 3 months. I wrote much of this last week, as you know, and it seems like daily information has been changing, and so I'll kind of highlight those changes as they come out. Just to orient you, for those of you who might have a binder or might be interested, we're going to focus really on the first few sections of the binder. The first is just kind of what is second interim, what reports are included in this, you know, kind of what is AB 1200, et cetera, so I walk through that. If you go to the narrative and assumptions, here's where I kind of talk about what's going on with the state of the economy, where we are now, and then a very detailed list of assumptions, which we're not going to go through in detail. Right behind the list of assumptions, there's also the common message. So CSESA, which is the statewide organization of county offices, through our county office, they put out the common message, and this is kind of guidance that most districts follow. So if you have an interest, look at the common message. It kind of will help describe, perhaps in a different level of detail, some of the assumptions that we'll be including. And then the last page under this tab is the dartboard. So the school services in California, they put out a dartboard that.
I thought you were, never mind. I thought you were making a joke.
No, that's how they do the budget, is they put a dartboard and they get a raise.
And this is, we usually use, this is kind of like the industry standard for using assumptions as we do our multi-year projections. What is the cost of living adjustment going to be in 2 or 3 years as we're doing that? This is not something that we pull together. It's a guide that we use, and we know the minute we finish a report, the assumptions can change. They've changed since December, frankly. And I'll point out some of those changes.
Is the LCF staying the same amount of money? Is it stagnant? Is it going up, down?
That's a great question, and we'll talk about that in the spreadsheets a little bit. The answer is it's always a moving target because the assumptions and the details we use to build the local control funding formula changes in that the free and reduced meal counts, the unduplicated counts, ADA is still just a projection. Remember, we do LCFF calculations for 7 organizations, that's all combined here. Each of those organizations, LCFF, might change individually up or down based on their estimated ADA. So we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. If you go to the spreadsheet tab, I'm going to walk you through some of the variances from December's first interim, our first budget revision, and this interim report. I'm going to focus on the unrestricted, but I will touch on the restricted. So to answer your question for this year, Ellen, the first section really represents the local control funding formula calculations. And as you can see, those 10 or 12 line items represents all the various buckets of funding that go toward funding our LCFF calculations. If you look at the very bottom total LCFF, that's 69,977, just under 70 million, that is our combined local control funding formula entitlement, if you will. See under column C, that first subtotal,
Okay.
69977. So we're literally $22,000 below $70 million in LCFF funded. The variance right next to it, that minus 31,038.67, it's dropped by about 30,000 since I presented this in December. Why is that? It's because in December, we were still very much projecting our average daily attendance, and we did not have any certified numbers for our unduplicated counts. CalPADS and CBEDS had not been certified. What's changed since then is we now have P1, we finalized our P1 ADA, that's period 1 ADA we report, and we're using our P1 to project what our P2 ADA is going to be. So typically what I do, and this may or may not be too much information, but I look back at last year's P1 and P2,
And how does that shift and change between P1 and P2? And I apply those percentages and assumptions toward estimating our P1, our P2, which is the end of March.
Okay.
So does that make sense? So with those changes, we then recalculate our LCFF funding.
Okay.
When we get to the multi-year projections, that's where the changes in the cost of living adjustments in the out years become more interesting, okay? It's important because $70 million represents 70% of our budget. We have a $100 million budget. We used to get a lot more money from categoricals. This 70 million represents a significant amount of how we're funded, okay? Again, I'm gonna focus on the variances. Lottery, you can see is up. Now, part of why lottery is up is we took our lottery ADA, which is a different ADA, it's based on annual with a factor of 4.446%. And we then apply the estimated in the dartboard, $134 per ADA, 153, excuse me, and 54 for Prop 20. And we estimate what we think that's gonna be. And so we've adjusted, again, across all of our 7 organizations, what we believe their lottery estimates are gonna be.
That's not gonna change per ADA, is it?
We won't know that until probably October
Okay.
of what this year's final, and that's all based on sales and whatever else, the magic they work in their calculations. But everything is an estimate. We do get quarterly payments for non-Prop 20. We don't for Prop 20. We get 2 payments for Prop 20, one in the spring and then one at the end. So moving along, you can see interest earnings. I bumped up our interest earnings by $81,000. And again, I'm looking at the first 2 quarters of interest. I'm looking what I believe our cash flow is, and then I'm estimating what I think our second 2 quarters of interest will be, the last 2. And I'm increasing that based on what I'm seeing in the trends. And that makes sense. Of course, it might not make sense now with interest rates now dropping again, you know, what a difference a couple months can make. But based on what we were seeing earlier in the year, our interest rates are definitely trending up. Local donations is just that. Special education contribution went up, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. I believe this will actually come back down at the next budget revision. Our contribution to special ed. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Going on to the next page, you're not seeing significant variances in our expenditures. You can see there's some up and down. Certificated, mostly I'm analyzing substitute budgets, and I'm saying, okay, where are we? We're 50, 60% through the year. Can we now start adjusting those down, knowing what our trends are? Some small variances in some of the other categories based on current staffing. Other classified really has to do with looking at some of our campus yard duty, campus security, and budgeting where those, but it also has to do with some of our guidance specialists and our MFTs that are funded by supplemental funds. Because remember, supplemental is part of the unrestricted budget. Going down, you can see we've reduced down some transportation contracts with first student, looking at what our actuals are going to be. You can see our utilities are up. This $35,000, we're looking at water and electricity in particular. So I don't know what your experience has been with PG&E personally at home, but all of the PG&E rates are going through the roof. And
Yeah, our settle up or whatever it's called,
the true-up bill.
the true up went, all of a sudden went up.
And just for you to know, we get our true-up bills in November, December, January, February, depending on the school. We just received Casa Grande's true-up bill, to give you an idea. No, I'm sorry, we just received Petaluma High Schools. We received Casa's a couple weeks ago.
What line is that, the energy?
5500 utilities. So that's a whole bunch. That's everything that's water, sewer, garbage, everything is in there. But the biggest increases we're seeing are, yes. And I'm also very concerned about water because with the lack of rain we've actually had to turn our irrigation back on. Otherwise, we're going to lose our fields and our landscape. So that's going to have potentially, if the rain doesn't really start hitting in a significant way, that could increase our water budgets for the rest of the year. I have not factored that in.
Okay, so let's pray for rain.
Absolutely. If I'm going into too much detail, let me know. Local site donations, you can see field trips, that's going to naturally go up because as we collect donations, that's typically where we budget it, or many of the school sites do. Capital equipment, that's mostly copier replacement. We brought many of those to the board, and this is just making adjustments for that. And then not very many other changes other than an increase in the deficit spending. Now, I will tell you, as I mentioned, I believe our special ed contribution will be going back down at the next budget revision, which will have an impact on this deficit spending, because the majority of this was impacted by that special ed contribution. And we'll talk about that in a second. Okay? Another reason that the deficit went up a bit is look down under South County Consortium. See how it went?
Wait.
Where's that?
I'm on the bottom of page 3. Under assign,
Yeah.
South County Consortium, SOCC. That is the reserves. Those are the reserves included in our general fund,
Got it.
specifically related to South County's fund. So for the South County fund, they have reserves at 954 in December. At the board meeting in December, there was a decision made to reduce the excess cost bill back by bringing the reserves down to a 5% level, or to a 15% level. So this adjustment here is reducing down the excess cost bill back one time in order to reduce down the reserves. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That on the natural creates deficit spending for us, because we're spending down prior year reserves. Also, keep in mind this $1 million in deficit spending includes about $350,000 of one-time carryover that the sites all receive. So all of their local grants and donations, when we budget their carryover, we're budgeting money that we received last year, but they're gonna spend this year.
Okay.
That by definition is deficit spending. So not all deficit spending is bad. Structural deficit spending, our ongoing revenues exceed or are not enough to cover our ongoing expenditures. That's a structural deficit, that becomes a problem. There is some structural deficit built in here, but not the majority of it. So you can figure about half of this is not, it's from one-time expenditures.
This is mostly a cash flow thing than a deficit of the annual budget, is that right?
Well, it is a deficit in that we're spending down our savings account, right? So we're spending more than we're taking in. But the question is, if our budget is 100 million and we're bringing in 100 million and we're spending 105 million or 110 million, if that 10 million is one time and it's gonna go back to 100 million the next year, that's not a structural deficit. But if 5 million of the 10 is one time and 105 million is ongoing and we don't get additional revenues, then that deficit will continue. So part of this is a structural deficit, and we'll show that when we get to the multi-year projections.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
This is an important part of this, I just want to try to explain it.
No, thank you, because I'm not, math isn't my thing. Numbers are not.
So if you go into the next page, we've made a lot of adjustments here. As Cliff knows, the CON-APP, the Consolidated Application Part 2, is on the agenda for approval, and that is where Cliff and I and Jason spend a lot of quality time going through all of our title funds and making adjustments for what our actual revenues are. A lot of these adjustments are reflected here. And we did see reductions in some of our title funding. Not as significant as last year where we were getting $80,000 reductions across both districts in Title I, but we were seeing $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 reductions. So, when we look at this 8792, this is a big transfer of apportionment from the county office. That's primarily our special education funds. So when we first got our apportionment information from the SELPA, which was February 25th or 6th, not a lot of time, there were lots of questions about our ADA and how they used to calculate our 2 separate districts plus live oaks. And so we adjusted it based on what we understood our apportionment is. But since then, we've learned that amount was not accurate. So we're going to be increasing this back up.
If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again.
We lost her.
Oh, well, Caitlin's home with the Cypher.
So it's a good news, bad news situation. The good news is that our revenue did not go down by 470,000. It's actually probably going to go up a little bit. And so we'll be showing this change in that at the next budget revision. So I just wanted to point that out. That's going to have an impact on our deficit spending because it will reduce. Yes, because it will reduce down our contribution to special education.
Good.
Okay. So going on to the next couple pages, again, we're making adjustments between many categories. A lot of it is coming out of this 4,300 materials and supplies. You can see that big negative 578. So again, as I've explained before, we budget carryover in a 4,300 account. And then the school sites and departments push it out into other categories throughout the year. And so you'll always see this number start out large in the first budget year, and then it goes down throughout the year because it's indicative of many of these categories. One of the largest changes was in the Department of Justice grant. We had a significant amount in the Department of Justice grant, and we're pushing that out because remember our resource officer got pulled back, and so we're having to work with them to rethink how we're spending that money. That's an example of how a significant change can happen. Okay? So with that, unless there's any questions, I'm going to go on to the supplemental information. I just wanted to highlight some of the big changes in the district. So if you go to the general fund tab, that's simply the spreadsheets only in the state format. I'm not going to go through that in detail unless you'd like me to.
No, that's right.
The other funds tab has all of our other funds, whether it's the adult ed fund or the cafeteria fund. So that's all here for your reading pleasure. Remember, we combine our two funds, so like the building fund 21 is actually the elementary 21 and the high school 22 combined.
Okay.
Because the state doesn't recognize us for these purposes as two. So, okay. Going on to the supplemental information, this is really where there's a lot of really good detail if you're interested and you want to drill down more. The first 2 pages are really our ADA. So remember how I talked about there was a drop in ADA? The one thing I want to comment on with the ADA is that there was a significant drop in our ADA and yet not a significant drop in our LCF. Why is that? Because we're using prior year ADA. So we can always use the greater of the current year or the prior year ADA for our non-charters. Charters don't have that luxury. So when you look at this ADA, and I know this is more than I usually go into, but if you look at column C.
Are you on page 123?
Yes.
Okay.
If you look at column C, 6119 is the first number. That's our projected P2 ADA. Look at the next column D, that's our funded ADA. See how that's different?
Yes.
So when the multi-year projections come through, it'll pick up this drop in ADA,
Okay.
okay? Unless next year's enrollment is up. If next year's ADA is up, then we'll use the greater.
But if we have anything that, like what happened this year, particularly with the power outages, and because we lose around that, then we're stuck. We're stuck on a low number. We don't have that ability. And so next year is a hugely important year for us as far as that attendance
But
goes.
we also have that extra week in there, right? And so if we use more than that extra week, since we put in the extra week, we will be able to get the waiver?
So the extra week, number one, happens after P2. So remember, we're funded based on P2. So the extra week happens after, so it won't impact P2 ADA. Well, it could impact annual, but that's a much smaller impact. I think that the issue is with the closures that we had in the fall, and it's the after that. It's the how many students come back that very first day versus the next day. So that's kind of where we see the impact. We're getting waivers for those days, or alternatively, we would use our emergency closure days. But the issue is the days before and after. So remember, the impacts of the closures, there were already air quality concerns. Here we're already reacting, and then of course after, we didn't come right up to 100% attendance the next couple days. So that's where we're going to see, from my perspective, the greater impacts.
Okay.
And that 6120 ADA, that represents a head count of like 7,500-ish, something like that?
Well, if you go to the next page, you have to put the two together because this is the non-charter.
Okay.
The next page is the charter ADA.
Oh,
So we report them separately.
Okay.
So that's why that 61 seems really low.
Right, yeah, okay.
So the charter ADA is about 995, and notice the projected and the funded are the same, because we can't use current year.
Thank you.
And notice even the charters were down a little bit. So when you combine them, it's more like over 7,000 a
Okay,
year.
good.
So it's a little bit better. Our current enrollment is about 7446, and that's K-12, or TK-12. Okay, sorry, I don't need to belabor points. Going to page 127, this is where our multi-year projections are. So going back to that, and I'm not gonna expect you to flip back, but you have the dartboard that we talked about, that was the last page under that first tab. The 88, the COLA changed, so back in December when we did it, the out years, 3.26 for this year didn't change, but it was, I believe, I wanna say 2.8 and 3.8 or 3.0. The COLAs were more significant, projecting out 2021 and 21-22. They've dropped to 2.29 and 2.71 respectively. So when we calculate our LCFF and we project, these are actually this column C and E for under the LCFF funding. That actually reflects our real calculations. So we have to calculate and project across all of these years, and then we put the summary, the sum total of that in there. So even though 2.29 is the COLA, right? Look at that 1.82, I'm looking at column A1, for those of you following along in the viewing audience. 2.29 is the COLA, 1.82%, one might say, why is that less than the COLA? And I would say, it's because we're in declining enrollment.
Okay.
So if I'm projecting out flat enrollment for next year, and therefore flat ABA, we're being funded on last year's ABA this year, so you're gonna see a drop.
All right.
It's not a total drop, it's just we're not getting the full benefit of the COLA because it's being offset by that loss in ABA. That make sense? Okay. Okay, so we use a whole set of assumptions, step and column, etc. Again, that's all of those detailed assumptions under the multi-projections. The only thing I want to point out here under column C, because remember column A represents those spreadsheets I just went through. Column C is what we're projecting for next year. See that negative 250 under other adjustments? So I'm looking at column C, certificated.
127, right?
127, C,
Oh, there, I see
column
it.
C, certificated base salary, step and column, and then a negative 250 under other. One might ask me what that is.
What is that, Chris?
That is estimated savings from the retirement incentive over and above what our typical step and column is. So we're estimating step and column at about 1%, which is what we typically do. Because we had 18 retirements under the retirement incentive, we're estimating a greater savings from that retirement incentive here, as well as some other changes in staffing, et cetera, some of which you've already seen. So does that make sense? I just want to point that out because that's somewhat unusual. We're building in the STRS and PERS increases. As you know, STRS is going to go up to 18.4%. That's a 1.3% increase. So we're building in about $700,000 between STRS and PERS increases in column C or 2021. Now we back that down a little because it goes back down to 18.1 in 21-22, so you won't see as significant increases in health and welfare. Bottom line is, look at C, column C, line C. That's $627,000 in deficit spending. That's where we look and we say, okay, is there an issue here? I'm still at 127. That $1 million goes to 626 or 627. But then the following year we recover. Now, if we adjust that special ed revenue, it's going to adjust both of these numbers as well. Okay?
That's assuming no changes in compensation.
Assuming no changes in compensation, assumes about a $250,000 savings over our normal step and column costs. So again, these are projections based on a set of assumptions. I have no idea how we're going to replace staff for those retirees. I have no idea if they're going to be coming in at step 1 or step 11. That's my range, column 1 or column 4. So we estimated at column 4, step 5, generally speaking, but really we don't have any idea. So there's still a lot. The crystal ball is still a little bit murky.
Okay.
And theoretically, That could change in May if California readjusts their numbers to reflect what potentially is a recession. That what we have been told initially in January could change a lot.
So I think the point is well taken. I mean, again, we completed this last week generally, probably worked most of these numbers by Monday or Tuesday of last week. The reality is we're in very volatile territory when it comes to the economy. And I would venture to say that right now is the best it's gonna get for a period of time. You know, I don't know what the ongoing impacts of the coronavirus are gonna be. You've seen the hit that the stock markets, I mean, they literally closed the stock market down for 15 minutes. I mean, that's yesterday morning, that was pretty unprecedented. I mean, there's a safety valve built in for them to do that, but it was a pretty dramatic drop to make that happen. The last time that happened, I want to say was in the 80s or the 90s. It's been a long time.
2008.
I'm sorry.
2008. 2008.
When they
triggered it.
Last time they had that.
They triggered it, okay. So we're having some historic little nail-biting moments with the stock market. And then if you factor in people that are not out spending because people are
Afraid to go to the store.
You've heard that Santa Clara, you know, was declaring for the county that they don't want any groups over 1,000. That means a lot of events are getting canceled, big events. So we don't know the impact is the bottom line. But what it tells me is that we need to move cautiously and be mindful that the economy might really shift and change. I've heard people use the R word more recently in the last day or two than I've heard it in the past. And I tend to be more of an optimist or realist. So anyway, I just want to put that out there because this set of multi-year projections is based on still a 2.29% COLA and still a 2.71% COLA. Those could easily become negative, which would have a massive impact on what we're projecting. So I guess that's all I'll say about that. Okay? So the last thing I'll just point out, and you'll be grateful to know I won't go through all of the details of the 26 pages of the criteria and standards, but that starts on page 137. This is a lot of trend analysis to say, is what I'm projecting in the multi-year projections and stuff, does it make sense based on our typical trends? Are we meeting our reserves? Are there economic factors indicating we're having a problem, et cetera, et cetera? So there's a lot of good information here. I would encourage you to read it if you're interested. With this, under the action item, the good news is that it's a solid budget. It's a solid budget not only this year but 2 years out, and we would at that time recommend approval with a positive certification.
And
But
what
that's
is our,
a year.
what is our reserve, 3%, our reserves are at 3%?
That's required.
Yeah. If you look at the back of the spreadsheets under the spreadsheet tab, and go to that page 3, it shows you the 2% reserve, the dollar amount that represents. It shows you the 3% reserve.
What page number are you on?
Page 3 on the spreadsheets under go back to the spreadsheet tab. It's the easiest place to see it.
Okay.
Page 3, under
There
the
it
last
is.
section of column C. You'll see the 2% reserve for economic uncertainty, that 2.1,2072. The 3%, which is 310, just put the rest back on 3108. And then our total ending fund balance is 9.9 million. Okay?
Thank you, Chris. And now, we will hear from Miss Erin. Any comments from the public?
I actually have a student here. That was their dog.
Oh, is that who we're yapping? Tell me to bring that
I want
up.
to just say it was really hard to follow a science presentation.
It was a great presentation. That's okay.
So
She can bring the dog in.
Well, I think they're walking the dog right over here. Erin Vandermeer and Dove Cook is about to come in as well. We started a club at Kenilworth, and we call it DIA, Diversity, Inclusion, and Activism.
Oh,
And,
nice.
Dove would like to speak to everybody about some of the first concern that came up. I gave a quick introduction about DIA.
Okay.
So just, well, we can talk about what's going on.
Hi, I'm Dove Cook. I'm going to represent DIA at Kenilworth Junior High. The problem our group has been discussing recently is menstrual products in the girls' bathroom. Though pads are provided upon request in the nurse's office, not a lot of girls know that they have that resource or don't feel comfortable doing so. What we'd like to happen is have pads and tampons easily accessible in the girls' bathroom. Thank you.
And interestingly enough, that is on future business.
Exciting. Did you want to tell about anything else we've been working on? Any other ideas that we've been working on? We've had about, in 2 meetings, we've had 6 people already join.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great club.
It's getting bigger, and we figured we'd hop right in with our activism immediately.
Good.
So that's where we're at. And I think we have other ideas to bring forward, but we're still, coalescing. Okay. Thank you.
But that is, your plan is on it's on future business, so thank you for bringing that forward. All right, report on activities and correspondence to the school board. We did equity training. We went to the Casa Grande High School play. We went to the Petaluma High School WASP. And we did office hours at Kenilworth. Okay. All right, approval of consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, is there anything you want to talk about before we vote on this? It's all pretty basic stuff. I have one question. Hey Cliff, how's the new study class, the course coming? Is that?
Are they coming?
Well,
It's already in play.
okay,
They were using a high school code.
okay.
It's a junior high course, so we had them develop the course themselves, and it's currently going great. We've got a full section of signups for
Oh,
next year as
excellent.
well.
Okay, great, that's what I wanted to hear. All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. All right, action items. Resolution 1920-22 of the Board of Education of the Petaluma City and Joint Union High School District reducing or discontinuing particular kinds of service by an additional 7.3 FTE for the 2020-2021 school year. Nothing that makes us happy.
Move to approve resolution 1920-22.
I second.
Any comments before we vote?
Maybe just a quick brief discussion, explanation, I guess,
Of the programs?
of the need, I guess.
Yeah, so,
Just for purposes of
it's a
transparency.
preliminary, typically it wouldn't be something we'd bring twice, I know we brought one last time, but some programmatic shifts, so we're being conservative and wanting to remain flexible. We're looking at, we are looking at the enrollment numbers and trying to stay flexible and be able to make sure that we serve students in the places where they're enrolling.
And we have to hit a deadline.
Yes, we
as
do.
well.
15 deadline, yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Business Services, approval of the Petaluma City Elementary Joint Union High School District's budget revision number 2 and the second interim for 2019-20.
Move to approve the second interim report.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Discussion, Business Services, Facility Projects Update. Chris, you're back on.
Yes, I actually have a PowerPoint, hopefully you guys can read it from here. So we wanted to come to you and just kind of let you know what we've been working on and what we're gearing up for. And, as I went through and was bulleting all of the stuff that we're doing, it's quite a bit. We're feeling really good about it. I'm just gonna give it a second here.
As we wait for this, will this include any update of the study on going off-grid, the batteries for campus?
No, but I will touch on that a little bit when we get to Kenilworth.
Okay.
Okay, so here's our facilities update. We're gonna start with Pine Grove. This is in no order other than right out of my brain. So at Pine Grove, as you know, we've been working on the basement.
So
So We have completed the installation of the new ADA accessible restroom, and that is up in Flushing. So we have installed a new path to the YMCA. If you have a chance to look at it, it's quite lovely. In-house, we built the bridge. By we, I mean our carpenters, and so they did a lovely job. It's really a nice path. So if you have a chance to go see it,
The basement's looking good too.
and it smells good, even more importantly.
Yes.
You know, I mean, because, you know, from an air quality perspective, we have installed, we're in the process of installing new HVAC and ductwork in the basement, because it doesn't have any heating and ventilation, except operable windows, et cetera. That's in design, we're hoping to complete that this summer. What we have in the meantime is we actually have, not air purifiers, but we have moisture equipment that's pulling the moisture out of the air so that we're drying out the air, because not having mechanical units, whether it's air conditioning or heating, dries the air out. And so we actually are collecting a lot of water every night. The custodian is dumping the water every single night. Because the basin, in the winter time, it's moisture, there's a lot of moisture in there. So we are taking measures just to make sure that that basement stays healthy and happy. We're looking at reconfiguration of the lower parking lot. For those of you who are familiar with Penn Grove, there are some challenges with drop off in the morning and pick up in the afternoon. And so we're working with the committee. We met with them already, and the architects are working on a reconfiguration of that. We have another meeting scheduled, if not this week, then the week after spring break.
And that was really when we did office hours. That was their only complaint, was the parking lot.
Well, and it's a very narrow, it's only a 22-foot ingress, egress. It's supposed to be by code 24 feet. We're gonna widen it to 26, and that I think will take some of the pressure just getting in and out. We stood out there watching it, and people pull in, and they're pulling in over the midway point, which makes it hard for people to pull out. So we're doing a lot of those types of things. There's a new plug structure in design, working with, again, the site PTA and Amy Fadegi, and looking at how we can partner together. You know, they have about 443 students right now. They're gonna have possibly close to 470 next year. They really only have one play structure, so we're looking at adding a different play structure for, you know, kind of separating younger and older kids, which is more typical. A new ADA accessible ramp from the basement up to the office. So we have a ramp in the basement, but it's not ADA accessible to get from that entryway up to the office. You have to go up that hill. So ramping it so we can get into compliance is another thing we're looking at. And then there's some student restroom repairs that are also in design. Mary Collins, and so removal of the fence post, you're gonna notice this, we call it the cowboy fence. Many of you will notice this around we removed it at Migny, or did you notice?
I heard, and we had some of the best wood that got cut down. Apparently ours was not as rotted as other schools. I've not ever been a fan of those because kids like to stand on that.
Yes, in fact, Jordan Lane.
On that cable.
Jordan Lane.
And I've had to tell a number of students, do not stand on that, because I do not want to have to pick up your.
So we ordered a debris box that we could get rid of hazardous material, that's pressure treated wood. So we have gone throughout the district and we have removed every cowboy fence post that we can find. Those are those fence posts with the cable that goes through them. I don't know why we had them at so many schools, but they're not very attractive. So you're gonna see that on many different slides. Roofing repairs and replacement, that's the Laurel Pod building and the admin building. That's in the bidding phase, HVAC unit, ductwork replacement, same buildings. The ductwork is on the exterior, it's not on the inside, and it's completely rotted out. Talk about bleeding energy. So we're working on that. And then a kitchen reconfiguration and modernization is in design. Again, working through the site committee on that. McKinley, installation of 2 new classroom portables. So those were installed over winter break. We're now working on plugging them in, so to speak. So you awarded a contract a few weeks ago for the electrical low voltage. That is happening now and mostly over spring break next week. We're doing roofing and repair on the lower roof / breezeways at several of the buildings there, and the kitchen roof. That's in bidding phase right now for the summer. HVAC unit replacement in the same areas as the design. New play structure, we're just starting to have conversations with Ani. Those, if you're familiar with McKinley, those play structures out on the back field, I mean, they're pretty old and pretty, you know, Matthew's shaking his head because we actually were having conversations about that 3 years ago. So we're just starting those conversations. And then renovation of the multi-purpose and kitchen room with new flooring, lighting, window coverings, and interior paint. That's in design, most likely summer of '21. We're gonna talk more about that when we come to a couple of the other schools. Grand Elementary, removal of those fence posts, the cowboy fence. Track removal, we are working with an environmental specialist and contractor to get some quotes to remove the rubberized surface that we removed from the blacktop 2 years ago. It was put on the whole track. So we're working on how can we get that material down, the zinc levels down by removing the base rock underneath, et cetera. It was very effective last time we did it, so we're working on that for the summer. And then replacement repair of small roofs of the facility office, where you're gonna see a lot of roofs. Roofs are in desperate need. McNear, wow, Loretta's here. Removal of fence posts in front, and I will say that Jordan Lane, who's our assistant director of maintenance and operations, who also went, I believe, to McNair, and he admitted to me that he was one of those kids that used to sit on the.
Still was in junior high too.
So anyway, so we have removed those, and it does look a lot better. If you go by Petaluma High School, you'll notice they're all gone in front of Petaluma High School, and the neighbors are just tickled pink. Roofing repair and replacement of the lower roofs for the admin building and the classroom buildings and breezeways. So the lower roofs of the breezeways also go into the part of the classroom, and then there's the bump up part of the roof. The upper parts we're not doing, just the lower where there's issues. So that's, we're working on for the summer. Carpet replacement for 8 to 10 classrooms. I'm meeting with the contractor out there next week. HVAC unit replacement is in design, because there's a lot of old units on this school, as well as some of our others. And then renovation of the multi-purpose room, kitchen, and student restrooms. So initially, my hope was that we would look at 3 elementary schools, McDowell, Valley Vista, and McNear, and we would renovate them all types of summer. The problem is, the more we delved in and kind of did some research, at McNear Elementary, they have 2 little tiny restrooms on each side of the kitchen. And they are not ADA accessible, either one of them, and there is no room to make them. One has a closet we could probably go into, one may. So it
They're also
immediately
very
became.
loud when you're watching a play and someone has to go to the bathroom.
So,
just thought I'd throw that out.
okay, so we'll incorporate in a little bit of acoustical elements.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is it's gonna become a big renovation, because all of a sudden we're redoing entire restrooms. So that'll be summer '21, it's gonna take more detailed design and DSA approval on that. So Valley Vista, renovation of the multi-purpose. So theirs is much more straightforward. So Valley Vista, we're looking at new flooring, new lighting, upgraded LED, window covering, so they have the old drapes that I'm sure are no longer fire retardant, et cetera. We want to put in shades, blackout shades on a push a button, it comes down, push a button, it goes up, to make it much more effective. Pocket table, interior paint. The stages are lovely. They redid the stages, I don't know how many years ago, but the stages are in good shape. Just the rest of the multis that need freshening up in a big way. And for them, Valley Vista's kitchen, the flooring is completely torn and ripped. It's actually probably in the worst shape. And the pocket tables, some of them are broken, they can't use them, so pocket table replacement. And then we're also contemplating window replacement, so in the classrooms, actually not just replacing the glass, which was plexiglass, but actually pulling them out and putting aluminum windows in. So we'll see if we can squeeze that in this summer.
I'll second that.
Oh, that's the
I've been trying for like 20 years.
I know. Okay, Kenilworth. I've got everybody here who can, yeah.
Yay!
So Kenilworth, new HVAC units and ductwork with controls in building C, D, and gymnasium building locker rooms in the bidding phase. We're out to bid for that project for the summer. New Pelican wireless controllers and thermostats. We are installing those in all of the portables so that we can give all 12 portables actually control over the mechanical units, which work fine. And we can control them as well because they're wireless, and we can control them remotely. So we can turn all the portables off or turn them all, or just mess with the teachers in general. So we think that's going to really improve the teacher's ability to control the environment in their classroom.
And then we can turn everything off at night and turn it
Yes,
back on.
and on breaks and so on and so forth, which is definitely a problem. Review of existing solar system and impact on roofs. Now, you are gonna start hearing more of this, and here's where I touch on the solar. So one of the things that we have discovered at Kenilworth, one of the many things is we've spent a lot of quality time out there, is that the design of the solar system at Kenilworth is actually damaging our roofs. So picture, I wish the science teachers, I know, I wish the science teachers were here because they would have enjoyed this. So picture you've got roll-out solar panels that are adhesive to the roof, that's a metal roof. And over the last 10, 12, 13, 15 years, the adhesive is delaminated, and that means that water has gotten under. So I'm waiting to hear what, so you've got electrical currents running through the solar panels that are sitting on metal roofs with water underneath.
That can't be safe.
Well, electrolysis is kind of this thing.
Yeah.
So we had a roof leak, and we thought maybe there was a penetration in the roof from the solar that they had done that. So when we peeked under the curtain, what we found is the roofs have some major issues. So we're in the process of reviewing. Remember that solar system's on a power purchase agreement, so we don't own it. So we're looking at the possibility of removing that solar system and then getting some quotes on how do we put in a more appropriate solar system. So more to come. Part of that solar system replacement would include a microgrid option. So Kenilworth may be a really good place that we can pilot something and see how it would work. And they said Kenilworth is actually a really good participant for that because they actually could function that way. Where some of our smaller schools, it's harder. And then review of remaining areas for HVAC replacement. So as soon as we get the HVAC project underway, then we're going to immediately start going into design and assessing the rest of the campus.
Good.
Okay, enough about Kenilworth. Petaluma Junior High. So roofing and repairs to most of the breezeways. Those breezeways are in terrible shape. Interior paint for various classrooms, we're assessing to see which classrooms we can paint. And installation of new exterior deck in the courtyard around the redwood tree. So that redwood tree is the bane of our existence because it's a beautiful, huge redwood tree, but it's ruining the concrete and it's become unsafe for the students. So we've been struggling with what to do because if we repair it, we kill the tree. Gary, I talked to him about removing the tree. It's a massive redwood tree, it's like 50 feet tall. So my thought is if we build a floating deck around it so that, it's porous, it allows rain, and then we can, so that's what we're gonna be looking at.
We don't want to lose the tree.
We don't lose the tree.
Move the school.
We're almost done, Gary. I only have like 40 more slides to go. Casa Grande installation of a new marquee on Eli adjacent to the tennis courts. That's a site project that we are supporting. The old MU, the OMU, exterior site improvements for outdoor plaza. That is in design. I met with the committee this afternoon. Very exciting stuff. Interior paint, we're going to consider doing some interior paint maybe of restrooms this summer. Phase 3 and the concrete ADA path through the OLA garden. We'll be looking at doing phase 3 this summer, and then installation of new, note the same Pelican controllers that we're putting in Kenilworth. We actually have already installed them in counseling offices to support 8 units here. So we're actually trying out a Honeywell system at Petaluma High and a Pelican system at these two. Carpe Diem, re-roofing and repairs completed in January, and we'll be continuing to work with Greg Stevens and our principal on doing some exterior improvements to the landscape that he's interested in. And then Petaluma High School. We've been spending a lot of quality time there.
It's a small font.
Cowboy fence is gone, new thermostats. This is the system I was saying, the Honeywell system for the counseling office area. Exterior paint on building D. Currituck and multi, that was completed. We noted dry rots. We're doing gutter repairs and dry rot repairs. New entryway doors, they had old wood paneling that was delaminated, so we actually ordered new doors, which is great. And we're gearing up for phase 3 of the exterior paint, the gymnasium complex.
Roofing?
Exterior lighting upgrades are underway, so we're replacing all of the exterior lights with LED fixtures and fewer LED fixtures, because there's a lot of lights at Petaluma High School, a lot of lights, a lot.
You're gonna replace those sconces that we had to turn upside down because the birds built their nests in and then we had to turn them upside down? So the
We
birds went
actually-
through their nests and then
we
the bulbs were
actually-
like hundreds of dollars.
You mean the very marine looking kind of?
Yes.
Yes, we probably will be
Yes.
looking at replacing or upgrading those. They don't really go. So roofing and repairs with a new swamp floor over the kitchen room, new fencing along the softball field, if you haven't noticed on Fair Street. Again, the neighbors super excited. We're replacing the fencing with black fencing. We're putting in new sidewalk along English Street, English and Fair, from Fair all the way to just past the greenhouse. It's never had sidewalk, that's happening over spring break. And as part of that, we're including a mow strip into the field so that we don't have grass and weeds growing up along the fence, that we can actually mow it, so we're trying to be smart about that. And then once that's done, we'll put in new black fence to replace the fence. Our fence is really bad shape at Petaluma High School. It's bad. And then removal of corrugated plastic. So anybody familiar with the ag shed? It's got 50-year-old, I'm guessing, corrugated plastic. For us to paint the back side, we're removing all of that corrugated plastic and we're gonna replace it with new corrugated metal and then 2 sections of clear so that they'll have some skylight. So we're working with Jake Dunn on that. And then lastly, district-wide installation of dark fiber is just about complete. They were here testing it earlier today. That's an E-rate funded project. Sidewalk and driver repair at M&O, installation of new ADA accessible ramp and stairs at the transportation office, conversion of the former music portable at the warehouse into an MDF for transportation. So the dark fiber's coming in. It did not really have an MDF, it was hanging in Marcia's office. So we're moving it to that, and then we'll be relocating that program. And then new AC paving and repairs at the warehouse. So other than that, and this is really just facilities and all the business budgets, but it gives you a flavor for what we're working on.
Good.
Is there a status update on that study I was asking about on going off the grid?
So, yes, they've given us some preliminary results. Again, we were talking to them about the Kenilworth
Right.
item. It's really kind of working through the mechanics of what is financially feasible and where does it make sense. So the preliminary report is at the smaller campuses. It's not necessarily financially viable to set up a microgrid at every small campus. So we're looking at the larger campuses, Kenilworth, Petaluma High, Casa, maybe Petaluma Junior High, to see, can we at least get some microgrids at those before? So we're just kind of working our way through it. The dark fiber project has kind of taken up a lot of our time.
Oh, it's the same contractor.
It's not, it's a totally different contractor, but it's.
Oh, your time.
Yes, exactly. So, anyway, hopefully you can see we've been busy and
Yeah.
we're really trying to make a difference, just removing those cowboy fences alone. I mean, it's a simple thing, cut it, but it's a good thing. And now no more swinging on that, so Loretta will have to find a new pastime.
No more scraping brains about this. Okay. Thank you, Chris. WASC.
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 Great excitement.
Yes, I've done many.
I'm sure everyone here has been involved in this.
Many.
So part of the WASP process is that you need to share your WASP report with the board and get some approval and some input from your stakeholders. So I sent this out to you, or Erica did a few weeks back, and hopefully you had a chance to look through it. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you might have. Our visit is April 6th and 7th, so a few weeks out. We look forward to having a 3-member team come and visit our school on Monday and Tuesday for a 2-day session.
Do you need
visit.
us there? Like we went to Petaluma High?
Thank you for offering for that. I think I'm setting up their schedule at this point.
Okay.
So I think there's not a lot to see. They tell us when they're going to come. So on Monday morning, that's not the peak of what we have to offer at that point. But if I need to reach out to someone, I
Okay.
will. And I'll thank you for offering
Just
that
let
to
us
us. I
know.
appreciate it very much. Thank you. So just a little short history about our WASP process for adult ed. It lapsed. We did have WASP many years ago, and it lapsed. So Carol
brought it back and asked if I would share it, so I did that in 2011-12. And we were approved for a 6-year WASC, and then we had a mid-cycle. During that mid-cycle, I was over at Petaluma Junior High, having some great experiences under the redwood tree, Chris, as assistant principal at Petaluma Junior. Then we had another full WASC again in 16, 17, and then here we are now for our mid-cycle. So again, they're coming out, they've been given the report, I've submitted all different parts, we use the WASC process that is typical for getting stakeholder input and having your different departments and teams help to write it. And do you have any specific questions about our WASC report?
You can knock them dead.
Yeah,
We'll
no,
do our
that's
very best.
such a great program.
It's a lot of writing. Because you can
Oh,
always
yes, it
ask
is,
to-
and it's not a repetitive
Okay,
writing.
you should think of anything, I'd be delighted to provide you with some answers. Before I step away, I just want to again thank the board and the superintendent and the cabinet members for the incredible support that we get for our adult education program. We are just extremely grateful for that over all of these years. So thank you very much for that.
Actually, we're extremely grateful for the program. It's pretty wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Rise Academy.
Yeah, so, one of the things that we're looking at going into next year is for students that traditionally we've placed into to Crossroads Rise, what do those services look like? We've had an opportunity to watch the evolution of the program, and in some regards, the older students, particularly the 9th grade students, we really feel like the changeover has been super beneficial. For the 7th and 8th grade students, we have a very, very small number of students. In fact, we started the year how far into the year before we even got the first student?
2 weeks.
Yeah. It was about 2 months.
We got a student who came to interview with us.
Interview, but to
So-
actually
and then
start.
it took probably a month before Dalton started with us, and then Jonathan.
Right.
So yeah, we were like
Yeah.
bare bones.
So we have a pretty small program, but right now I think 9.
No, we have 11 and 2 more probably when we get back from spring break.
And 2.
But that's, that's
Right.
13.
And they're
For two
all 8th
teachers.
graders? Or there's one 7th grader?
One of them that is going to be coming is a 7th grader. We have one 7th grader on campus now, the rest are 8th graders. So that means at the end of the year, we're going to be looking at the same situation. Maybe those 2 7th graders will continue with us, and maybe they won't. So how many students are we going to be starting with and how long until we fill up the school?
So we're looking at, the efficacy of the program of students that have demonstrated a lot of high-risk behaviors. They have a number of issues going on in their own personal lives. What efficacy of placing them all together in a self-contained environment away from their heterogeneous peers, and is that really the healthiest model to be throwing out there to your 13-year-olds, 14-year-old students. And so we're going to be working through that process and trying to determine what's really in their best interest moving forward. We had a conversation today with the junior high principals regarding that. We know that we want to be able to provide some targeted support for those students, including some mental health support. But a lot of students that traditionally have been served in the program have struggled with issues such as anxiety, have not been successful in their academic setting. And so there's no easy answer to it, but this is really our opportunity. It's been a humbling experience to try to figure out an answer for them. We are not there yet. We're nowhere near where we should be for a very small group of students in meeting their needs. And so we're going to continue to plug at it. So just to kind of give you a heads up that this is an issue that even though it's a few kids, we want to make sure we serve them correctly. So not much more to that.
Okay. Any comments about that?
Are those few kids primarily from Kenworth and Petaluma Junior?
Yeah, we only had one student that was out of district of the, I'm not sure about the two that they're coming in, but they, for the most part, are proportional to the schools.
How do students end up there? I mean, do they self-nominate, or is it a school decision or a parent decision, or?
Well, there's a process that each school goes through. One of the challenges that we have is we don't really have a hardly defined multi-tiered system of supports.
Okay.
And so some of that process we need to continue to flesh out. But there is a process for them to go through at their school sites before they get there. But
And it is a little, it's both. It's not compulsory to go to RISE, which was part of it, you know, between Becky and myself, site administrators, site counselors, Becky's counselor. It's a lot of conversations with family around programs that will be, you know, that your student would feel comfortable in. So it is, you know, pulling student away from whatever their homeschool is and going to RISE, but by their decision and their family's decision.
Okay, so it's, okay.
Yeah.
it is I will say that it is a very, for lack of a better word, an old school model. This is a model that is more consistent with what they did in the 60s and 70s, what they called an 8.5 class, which were students that weren't ready for high school, and they had them stay an extra year. And that doesn't exist anymore because it was hugely ineffective because of the very reason that placing them all together in that situation. And so no matter how high quality those staff are, that's a big, big hurdle to jump. And so, you know, I think that, and not all our kids, you can't, all the kids in the program, they have different needs. There's some similarities, but they all come from so many different backgrounds that we're going to have to just do a really deep dive in the next few years, because I think it's going to take a while to really perfect what we're doing for these kids. But we want to make it a priority.
And how do the parents, you know, you talk about this conversation, are they perceiving that as well right now with the 11 kids who are at RISE right now? What's their perception of what's going on?
Well, 9 of them are promoting, right?
I'm sorry, what?
I'm just asking the parents' perspective of those students at RISE right now. Are there?
So you can imagine how a parent would feel having their child in what feels like a private school. That's really what it's like for them. And if any of those parents came in here to speak to you, they would tell you they love that environment because it's helping their child feel like getting back to school is a good thing, right? But we have students who are coming to school who weren't going to school at Kenworth. We have students who were getting in trouble who aren't getting in trouble. So all of that is true, but I think it's also really true that we're robbing them of an opportunity to explore. And I think we've done a great job, don't misunderstand it. We've worked really hard to create this program. We've had no suspension all year compared to what the school has had in the past. But I think you're right, Gary, we're robbing them of an opportunity to be exposed to their peers and the activities that happen at the comprehensive sites.
Plus the discussion and all that other stuff. That
Right,
goes on.
so, and bringing these kids in who all have very different needs, trying to solve them in a self-contained classroom it's hard. You know, I give a lot of credit to my teachers. They're working really hard to do it. We've got supports, not enough for the amount of work that those kids need, but we have supports in place to help them. But it's hard. It's really, really difficult.
How many of the 8th graders that are promoting are going to stay at San Antonio?
I don't think any of them will at this point. We're working very hard to prepare them foundationally in math and in science and English to be able to matriculate onto the comprehensive site. We have one of the counselors coming in when we get back from spring break to talk about the Bridge program, which is a summer school program for entering 9th graders, and to talk about electives for the 2 high schools. So we're really hoping to get them there. Then, of course, the landing piece. But they're going to be incoming 9th graders as opposed to in the past Crossroads incoming 10th graders.
Right.
We're already behind the 8 ball. These kids are entering with all the other 9th graders. So I think there's more likely success to be found for most of those kids. Some of them, I think we'll see them back at Carpe or San Antonio or or Sonoma Mountain.
And as a matter of course, you'd like to encourage ninth graders to at least start with, at the comprehensive high schools, they might find a program they fall in love with, it gives them the AUG opportunities. You know, and then some will go back to the alternative because they like the small school.
The numbers were pretty dismal at Crossroads. The Crossroads matriculation rate, or successful matriculation rate at that time from Crossroads to CASA or to Petaluma High School was less than 10%. Successful, meaning it runs, you run into that fundamental issue of if our goal is to prepare them for beyond high school, they do feel very safe, and they're in an environment, but the environment itself, they're only there for a short period of time, and then they're back in another environment, and we haven't been able to figure out how to successfully bridge that transition, because the gap becomes greater and greater. The gap is, without a doubt, is greater between where they come in at 7th grade and other 7th graders than where they come in at 9th or 10th grade and other 9th and 10th graders. That gap has just only grown. And so we've got to figure out,
How to bridge that.
How to bridge that, a little bit.
All right, well, let's see, future business, we have menstrual products, TOSA update, transportation presentation, environmental literacy presentation, and gate testing information coming up. Is there anything else we need to throw on that future business?
So I just wanted to add, the environmental literacy folks, they want to come on April 21st.
Oh, they want the April 21st one?
We also have the TOSAs that night, so we'll just have a couple.
And menstrual products.
We'll have a couple long presentations.
That's okay.
So,
because transportation isn't coming till May.
Yeah, we for future business, I'll bring back something. I'm going to bring back something for conversation related to conversation today regarding the science piece.
Okay.
But I want to caution you that on that one, that's going to take a while to really develop out. Because as I was really listening to the teachers, and I appreciate their advocacy for science, because I think that everything that they shared was logical. There are implications across the entire school community on this. There are science implications I've written down, there's math, there's implications for those teachers that are currently teaching those courses. We need to get some feedback from those teachers about that. We need to get feedback from math. We need to get feedback from counselors, because there's a counselor perspective here, there's the principal perspective, and perhaps even a parent perspective.
I think I would want to know, like, really why parents aren't putting their kids in 9th grade physical science. I don't know if it's because it's not A through G at CASA or
Right.
what, because it's not A through G at CASA.
So I think we could, I think it's preparing a report on it. This is the information, and then letting you digest that.
Okay.
But that's probably going to take through, we probably aren't going to have anything complete until the early fall, probably August, September on that.
But they are piloting, are they piloting now, or are they going to be piloting in the fall?
Piloting right after spring break.
Right after spring break, so.
What are they piloting exactly right after?
Yeah.
We're gonna be piloting the Bravo.
A graduation, just a shift in graduation requirements is a massive, massive change. That you would, if at the very least, even if you did it, it would have to be a phased in, based on when students were starting their
I would also
freshman year.
like to hear if they're piloting these programs that are 3-year, and they're thinking we have to do this, and how that works. Is it working for them?
Right.
What was the pilot like?
I think what they're saying is they're not sure how they can make it work and keep up because they're head
Right.
down.
But they're going to be piloting them
But it
anyway.
doesn't look possible with, yeah.
So I'd like to just hear how it went.
Yeah.
So what's interesting, and we've had this conversation with the science committee several times. So the state, no one is saying they're supposed to teach all the NGS standards in the 2 years of the high school graduation requirement. No one's saying that. So the fact of the matter is, if we go 3-course model and we stay 2 years graduation requirement, we're at least guaranteeing our kids are getting 2/3 of the standards.
Right.
Hopefully more, because a lot of our kids do take that 3rd year of science. If we stay the model we're at now, which is 4-course model, and we take the test junior year and the graduation requirement stays at 2, you know, we're only guaranteeing that some kids are only getting half of the material. Those that take a 3rd year get 3/4, but no one is getting all 4 courses. Right now, they're not. By the time they get tested, they haven't taken all 4
Unless
courses.
they're choosing, unless it's a major, and then they're taking science all the way through.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. If we had a 3-year requirement, they'd feel more inclined to do the 3-year model. If we don't, they want to stay at the 4, which just mathematically doesn't make sense to me. But we've had that conversation.
So we got it, well, we just need to get you a lot of information so that we know what all the implications are. Like little things like what percentage of our students, like percentage of number, current seniors have taken 3 years of science. It might not even be an issue. Or what percentage have taken mathematics, you know, what's the implications? What I don't want to see happen is for someone after the fact to come to the board and say, you know, you destroyed our program, our elective program, because this is what that effectively did. You should know that. If that's the perspective that somebody has, we want to give them an opportunity to share that, to gather that information.
So I just sent you an email of all the math science related courses that we currently have, just what they are, so you can see.
That fit under the math science requirement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every math science related course that's in that category for graduation requirement. So you can see there's only 4 science courses in there, there's only 4 math courses in there. Most of them are CTE. But if that was converted into a science, for example, I hadn't thought of this till I was doing this report. If we converted all those and just moved those back over to the greater elective pool, one of the unintended consequences could be that students take from the elective pool and they don't take any of the formally required math or science related. So it's hard to put a number on exactly, you know, how many kids could do that, but that opens up that possibility. So that'll be one of the things we'll have to look at, is what are those unintended ripples.
Are they wanting like sequencing, like physical science, biology, chemistry, or someone like, do they want like specific or bio, chem, physics, like, is there a sequence?
Well, it sounded like they did have a sequence.
Okay.
They wanted people to be, they wanted people to take physical
All the
science.
freshmen take physical, so
Yeah.
they do want sequencing.
That's what it sounded to me like, because they want a required freshman class.
Okay. But it has to be that required freshman class, not biology.
Right, because the earth science class, or whatever it's called that they were talking about, kind of hits a lot of different pockets. And it helps them as they go on. Okay, well, we're not adjourning to closed session. And action on items heard in closed session, resolutions 1920-23 and 1920-24 were passed unanimously. And on that, we are adjourned.